The other items relating to Brexit this week. So this is a bit of a Brexit session tonight on Byline TV. So we'll be talking about not just how the fishing industry has been impacted, but we'll also be talking about other exports, we'll be talking about imports, we'll be talking about the big row kicking off between the UK and the EU over the recognition of the EU ambassador status. We'll also be talking about, of course, British musicians and European musicians and the mutual access that they have to our different countries. So we'll be covering all of that, and then at the end we'll take a 5-minute break, and for those of you that follow Byline TV on Patreon, then we're going to go over there for a Q&A session, because Byline TV is a new community. It's where we get to hear your ideas, express your ideas, chat, engage, and all of that. So if you're already a Byline TV member on Patreon, then just hop across to there. If you're not, well, then you'll have 5 minutes to register, won't you? And come and join us. Right, so that's it. That's the overview. I want to crack on immediately to the first item because this is fascinating. It's also very heartrending, really, because earlier this week, the Byline TV crew went down to Brixham, which is in Devon. Brixham is a fishing port. Fishing and tourism are its core industries, to talk to Ian Perks, who is the largest exporter there of fish. And he's been on media recently talking about how it's impacted him. But with our team, he really opened up his heart to talk about the real problems that they're facing now, the fact that he hasn't been able to export anything since the beginning of January, and how he wishes, if he could turn back the clock, that he would have voted Remain. So here's why. So let's roll that teaser footage that we have.
Yeah, you know, if I could turn the clock back, would I have voted leave? Of course not. I don't want to stay in. You know, it's for the future of my family, not so much me. You know, I'm coming to the end of my career. But to go forward, I think me and many others have perhaps made a mistake. I just thought there'd be a better future for myself and for my children and my children's children, to become independent, to have our own fishing grounds, to be able to be independent, to be able, you know, for Europe to rely on us. The reality is we're now January 20. We've yet to send a consignment to Europe from Brixham. It has just been an absolute nightmare. I think I was sort of taken along on the ride that we were all on, with the bus going around. You know, we were going to save £350 million per week that we're throwing into Brussels, that we're going to have this free trade, and Europe were going to be desperate for our fish because we'd have control of it all, and we'd be in control of our own destiny.
The key is we've got our fish back. They're now British fish, and they're better and happier fish for it.
Very disappointed with the comments. Rees-Mogg, you know, happy fish, please. Happy fish, you know. I don't think there's any room to make any jokes about this current situation. 44 years I've been selling fish, and overnight it's pretty much been destroyed.
How would you describe the news?
Disappointed, very disappointed, and yeah, I don't see a light at the end of the tunnel as we speak.
All right, that was heavy, and you should really watch the full version. We do actually have the full version also on the Patreon. Go and watch it if you can. It's sad. It's really sad. I mean, this is like when I had that chat with the oysterman who's been doing this in his family for 300 years and has been exporting to Europe as well, and has just shut the door on that because he can't afford to now. Ian's saying the same thing, that essentially you can't compete with providers in the European market when they have zero paperwork. They just catch and move. Whereas for UK fishermen and UK shellfish farmers, they have to catch, these are perishable goods, they have to try and get the health certificates in quickly, they have to order all of the other paperwork, and they can't do that just-in-time delivery, that rapid response that their competitors in Europe can do. And furthermore, here's the kicker, and this has been said before, but what we catch here in the UK, in the UK waters, is not what UK citizens generally consume. The market for a lot of it is actually in Europe. And as you'll see in the longer version with Ian, he goes into detail saying, we've tried before. You know, there are different grades of sole that you can catch, and only some of them you can sell into the UK market. There's cuttlefish, and we in the UK have tried to adapt the taste of the Brits to all the things that we catch on our shores, and that has been pushed before, but it doesn't work. And so we've got this even though we've done a trade deal with the EU, and that has removed tariff barriers, it's the red tape barriers that means that there's just that marginal extra cost that means that British fishermen can't compete with European fishermen. We're going to go for a break right now, and we will be back in just a second, and then we'll continue to talk about that and all of the other impacts that Brexit is having, not just in fishing, but across lots of other industries of export, import, musicians and travelling, but then also diplomatic rows that are kicking off. So catch you in just a sec. Okay, so we should be back and hopefully with better sound. We've got the in Brexit. Firstly, there is a row kicking off between the UK and the EU over recognising EU ambassadors and EU diplomats in the UK. So we don't want to give it the same recognition that we give countries, even though this is what we were angling for whilst we were inside the EU, and even though there's 140 something countries around the world that recognise those EU ambassadors and diplomats at that level. But nevertheless, our government decided to kick off and be totally petty about it, which is bizarre given that we spent so much time during those Brexit negotiations talking about sovereign equals. Here's the EU and here's the UK, and they are both sovereign entities and they are equal entities and they deserve mutual respect as sovereign equals. And then now they're saying, nah, we're not going to recognise it as a sovereign entity. So what is that? And furthermore, it's not exactly the best time to be pulling out Trump moves, whereas this move is exactly what Donald Trump did back in 2019, where he downgraded the status of the EU ambassador. So for Boris Johnson to be pulling out exactly that move, just as Joe Biden is being inaugurated, it doesn't sound very smart, does it? But anyway, that's what our government's doing. It's not as if they've got the full backing of their party on it, because Tobias Ellwood, a Conservative MP, has already been ripping into them on that count. So how smart is that overall? Michel Barnier has been out saying very calmly and professionally it would be wise for the Brits to sort this one out quickly and amicably. But that has also been obviously echoed by a lot of Conservative commentators that just do not see the point in being so petty. So that is not the only Brexit story that has been going on this week. Of course, at the beginning of the week, we saw all of those fishing lorries descend on Westminster. There was some 24 of them by the best counts, and they actually came from all over the UK. It wasn't just Scotland, even though Scotland was very prominent because of the size of its fishing industry and because Scottish fishing is so dominant in the fishing industry, and also because they feel a lot more confident voicing their opposition to Brexit and the Brexit process. But that was a real shocker for this government. But it's not just fishing and it's not just shellfish. It is also our meat exports, whether it be lamb or whether it be pork, are having trouble getting into the European market, or even if they get into the European market and find that they're being held up for so long for paperwork that's not filled in properly or whatever snare-ups it is, they can't even get it back. They sometimes have to get it back and then destroy it, adding more costs. So there's been a report on the BBC as well of someone who exports pork saying that it's been held up for ages and now his pork is rotting in Rotterdam. And that's where we are, because the issue is that for all perishable goods, this new barrier of red tape really slows things down, but also for food in particular, as we heard from Tom Howard, that I interviewed earlier this week. For food in particular, the margins are so small that any extra burden on that is an absolute killer. And that's what we're seeing across our food export industry. And that's just going to keep going. This is not teething problems. This is a new costly barrier, which is now, as Tom told me, set in stone, to use his words. And this is what they're facing. But it's not just the big exporters, is it? Next Brexit item to hit this week. BBC reporting an item whereby there was this young woman who ordered a £200 coat and was asked to pay an extra £82 on it. That's the one that the BBC, chose to focus on that example. But you will have seen over Twitter lots of people, and you'll probably know from family and friends, trying to order items now from Europe, now that we're outside the single market and the customs union and the single VAT area. Well, you have to declare VAT on those orders. You have to pay VAT, you have to declare the VAT amount, and there has to be checks on that to make sure that the amounts are correct. And running those checks costs the person importing those. So just like when you do imports of small items, anything that you fancy to import from the States or elsewhere globally, now also for Europe, where a lot of big suppliers are, you get that too. So lots of people are finding that they're being landed with surprise costs for orders that they're making from the continent. And the person that they featured on the BBC was saying, I was shocked that this happened. As far as I'm concerned, you should not be shocked. This is a complete flaw of our mainstream media at the moment, that they are not anticipating these issues, which were quite clear for a long time as a consequence of what happens when you leave the single market in the customs union. The fact that so many people in our country are shocked just goes to show that our mainstream media, like the BBC, also the others, but the BBC has a duty for public education. That's been long-standing and what its mission is meant to be. And so the BBC does not highlight these issues coming up. They tend to just play an MP champion of one side versus an MP champion of another side. We'll sit back in the middle and be the referee. We'll be the chair on this debate. We've done our job. Either of them can lie, but they'll counterbalance each other, and then that's all they do. Whereas this was a clear issue coming along. And to prove it, there is an article that we shared on Scientists for EU back in May 2016 on exactly this issue, that if Vote Leave gets their way and leaves the single market and the customs union, what's going to be the impact of that on science and labs? It is going to be that on all orders that we make, we've got that risk of the customs checks, we've got those problems with the VAT. That is a clear issue that hasn't been highlighted. So this is dead frustrating that we're finding this out from now after the fact from our mainstream media. It's like, well done, guys. You've been sleepy all the way through. Thanks ever so much. It's not just the fault of Brexit here. It is the fault of lack of information, lack of quality information right throughout the Brexit debate. Okay, let us move on to the next thing. Yes, this is, what's been kicking off about musicians, right? Our government signed this Brexit deal for Christmas Eve. Boris said, this is my gift to the nation, full of opportunities, especially opportunities for fish. And then we all dive in, we start looking at this Brexit deal, and for musicians, there's absolutely nothing for touring musicians that guarantee them a grace period of being able to tour around the EU. And at first our government was saying, oh, this is the EU's fault. We really wanted to open this up for you guys. We're there for you. We wanted you to have those opportunities, but the EU shut us down. And then the EU countered with, hold sec, that's complete rubbish. We offered specifically a 90-day visa-free right for musicians from the UK to tour around the EU, and similarly the EU to tour in the UK. We offered them that. And our government, on pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, finally went, yeah, well, we couldn't accept that because that's too long a time period and that would give EU musicians too many rights. So they deliberately turned down that opportunity in order that they might restrict EU-based entertainers coming to the UK and performing here. It was directly to be bastards to them that they limited the opportunities of our own musicians and artists. What kind of mentality is that? But they have now admitted it. So, of course, our entertainment industry kicks off. You've got Ed Sheeran, you've got Elton John, you've got plenty of others piling in, writing to the government saying, sort this out now. What are you even thinking about? And one of those signatories, ironically, is Roger Daltrey of The Who. Now, we know Roger Daltrey of The Who because he was one of those entertainers, those few entertainers, that was pro-Brexit, and when challenged specifically on the issue of, well, how does this impact music? How does this impact the ability of young musicians to tour around and make their name in Europe, just like, for example, the Beatles did, or David Bowie had some later years in Europe. What about their ability? He was like, what's that got to do with Brexit? Nothing to do with Brexit. We toured before, yeah, when he had his, big band and other people taking care of that. So he dismissed it right off and walked away, right? But now, he's one of the signatories on the letter. So this is the guy that sang, won't get fooled again, and I can see for miles, but he didn't see that one coming, did he? But now, clearly, he no longer believes in the magic bus and Boris the Spider, and rather, now that he's actually gotten older, he knows it's important to think about other generations. Sorry, I just had to do that pun-laden rant because it's just far too tempting, isn't it? But that's where we are in the music industry as well, and it is dead important to the cultural life of Britain that we can get out there and we can express ourselves, but also that we can drink in culture from the top artists on our continent and facilitate that. Why would we not do that? This is a very clear case of real mean-spiritedness from Priti Patel and others in our government on this front. Right, so what are we doing next? Yes, first of all, I want to do a video recap of that interview that I did with Tom Howard, the oyster fisherman in Essex, earlier this week, where he was telling us that, look, he's an experienced exporter. His family have been doing this business for 300 years. He knows how to do paperwork because he does paperwork for when he has to do exports to Taiwan. He does shipments there. He can handle that once in a while where he's given a long lead time in order to do that. But he also had businesses, sort of exports, going to Europe. And the added burden for the paperwork there and the lack of ability to do rapid turnaround means that he's just had to sack off those exports that he would do to his colleagues in Europe, knowing that other European, shellfish fishermen could take over there. He can't make those margins. It's not worth his while. So let's take a look at that clip again when I talk to him particularly about the burdens of the paperwork that he's suffering. So please roll that clip.
We were supplying Spain, Belgium and Germany regularly and sending a healthy amount to each of those countries. But Brexit alone, we've lost them completely as customers. We've just lost them. We physically can't send oysters to them anymore because of the cost that's involved with that paperwork.
And we asked you for some of the examples of the paperwork, and you sent us through 3 examples of paperwork saying, this certainly isn't all of it, but here are a few things that you should know about. You should know about the certificate of origin that we have to complete now, certificates of health that need to be completed, catch certificates which now need to be completed, and this one from HM Government which you sent us, which I'm looking at on my phone, needs signatures all over the place. We need a signature from the master of the receiving vessel. We need a signature from the transshipment authorization within a port area, another signature for name and address of exporter, another one from flag state authority validation, another one on the importer declaration with their name and address. So this has to pass through a lot of people's hands. This is time consuming, right?
Very time consuming. And the thing is that with the health certificate alone, which needs one signature for the export health certificate, which basically is saying that your product is safe for human consumption, you need one person from local authority, environmental health officer, to sign that.
Yep.
But that alone takes a lot of time and a lot of emails or phone calls. We can't do that in the new system because there's no way at 10 a.m. I'll be able to then get hold of my environmental health officer to sign a certificate by the end of the day that day. I wouldn't be able to do it.
Okay, so that was like a really eye-opening interview. And again, the full interview, we've got a longer version on YouTube, so you can go to YouTube and just check that out if you look up Byline TV on YouTube. But the real full uncut version is again on the Patreon, so please subscribe to the Patreon if you want to see that. I personally found it a fascinating interview. We also talked about what he thought about Nigel Farage. So if you particularly want to see that, then I encourage you wholeheartedly to get on the Patreon and see what he has to say there. Because Nigel Farage and other champions of fishermen like them have kind of gone quiet recently, haven't they? So let's talk about Tom's own MP, because in the longer version, as you'll see on the Patreon, I was like, so who's your MP? What's he doing for this? And he said, well, my MP is Bernard Jenkin and he hasn't been very helpful. And so I said, oh yeah, okay, so we'll go and tweet this at Bernard Jenkin then. But lucky us, Bernard Jenkin has already decided to come out of the woodwork. He is concerned. He's concerned about all this paperwork, but from a very narrow viewpoint. He wants us to believe that this paperwork, this new barrier put in place by Brexit, this red tape barrier, is all the fault of the EU, and the EU are egging it up just to punish our shellfish exporters and our British fishermen. So here's Bernard Jenkin asking, and then when he gets slapped down, trying to ask again. It's all the EU's fault, right? They're trying to make us jump through too many hoops, right? Have a look at this clip. It's hilarious as he gets told no twice over.
Is there some surprise that export health certificates are being enforced much more religiously on fish products than on other SPS products?
I wouldn't say that, as far as we can tell, that they are being enforced more rigorously on fish products than on other products. The issue is more that even a small delay at any stage in this process can be serious for a consignment of fish because of its perishability.
Is there any evidence of what one might call gold plating at the imports of entry?
No, I don't think that would be fair.
So that is our busy week in Brexit. I hope you've enjoyed that and all the fun clips that we've been throwing in there. I mean, this carnage is obviously going to continue. So here at Byline TV, you know, we've got an interest in communicating all of this, developing this line, doing those interviews from people who are really impacted by it and getting those stories out there. So that is what we're up to at the moment. But also, like I said before, this is a community. So if there is anything that you particularly want us to cover that you're not seeing covered elsewhere, people that you think we should be interviewing, we want to get on that case. So send us messages all the time. If you've got particularly funny clips like that one of Bernard Jenkin, you know, let us know, and we will be trying to, you know, weave all of these in order to present you with these, you know, fun, entertaining, rounded packages which also keep you well informed. We ourselves, of course, want to highlight various issues which are hot topics which we don't think are being adequately covered. For example, next week, we want to cover the specific issue of what happens with Donald Trump now. Now that he's been banned from Twitter, Facebook, all these different social media channels, is that right that he should be banned outright? How long should he be banned for? How many other people should be banned? And how long for? When is this censorship? When is this people breaking their terms and conditions with different platforms? When is a public square of exchange of ideas become a private square that is in the gift and the right of private companies to regulate? Or how much does the nation state have a say over that, or the public have a say over that? That's an important issue to address, because much as we like to celebrate the departure of Donald Trump, we also need to think about what's actually fair moderation and engagement of trolling behaviour, incitement behaviour, exchange of ideas. You know, we've got to tackle that, you know, front on. So that is coming up next week on Wednesday, I believe. We're going to have a discussion about that. But all of these issues, you know, we are looking at who we can talk to about this, how we can approach all of these issues from different angles and have those long-form debates, right? Those debates which, you know, we really, really dig under the skin of this with people who know in a good ambient environment, and then get the questions and feedback from you guys as to what we should be discussing further. So that's the aim of it. And with that in mind, what we're going to do now is we're going to take a short break. And then for those of you that are already on the Byline TV Patreon, in about 5 minutes, we're going to come back. And then on the Patreon, we're going to have, you know, a question and answer session with me. So you can ask about the videos of Tom and Ian that we made this week. And you can ask about what plans we've got next. You can make your suggestions and we can discuss those. We can have all of that chat in our sort of like post live session, sort of stripped down, sort of relax, get comfy, after show back and forth. If you're not on the Byline TV Patreon, well, now you've got about 5 minutes to sign up. And so if you become a monthly donor, if you become a monthly sponsor, then that means that we've got a lot more capacity, not just to do these shows in the studios, but also to get out there, do all the different interviews, do further research, and also sort out some of the sound issues and get more equipment, like some of you have been saying, so that we can make this very, very plush studio even plusher and even nicer. So all of that good stuff is to come. The best is yet to come, as someone infamously said. So we'll wrap it up there for the moment. We'll take a break. And for those of you that want to join us for a chat, I'll see you in 5. Thanks ever so much. Please share, retweet, and sign up to the Patreon.